Recently, I was on Brian Wilson's Libertas Media project, and I thought you'd like to hear what we talked about.
March 6th, first of these podcasts featuring those on the front lines defending liberty, freedom, and the rights of the individual. The point man for this tiny band is Lew Rockwell, founder of the Mises Institute and host of LewRockwell.com, which, if you have yet to visit, has for decades been the leading source of material to instruct and assist all of us in raising our own awareness and arming ourselves with the intellectual ammunition to engage in the fight for hearts and minds ourselves. I have to say, in a demonstration of courage and compassion for the empirically challenged, Lew occasionally actually runs some scribbling with my name attached, which, if nothing else, helps readers to truly appreciate the talent, intelligence, and perspicacity of the other writers. But on that note, once again, friends, back for round two here at the Libertas Media Project, the veteran of the Liberty Wars, Lew Rockwell, and it's great to have you back. I don't think we should go March 6th, April 6th. I think we should go 2-3 months without chatting.
Well, Brian, that'd be great not to go so long, and it's a great pleasure and an honor, as a matter of fact, to be on your show.
Well, you're very kind. Hopefully, we're making progress, or as my father used to say, we're making haste slowly here at the LMP, and hopefully we're going to be up to 4 or 5 of these a week with callers coming in, and we can expand the conversation and all the rest. By the way, I had a great chat with Walter Block yesterday, and I was thinking, if you and he got together, we could form an entire organization, call it the Blockwell Institute. I thought that might work out. What do you think?
How about Rock Block?
Rock Block. Ooh, that would be good. Yeah. We could, then we could open up a bar. Well.
Sounds good to me.
Well, that would work. Since we chatted last, March 6th, while little of it is seen as really positive, so much has happened. Would you tend to agree that current events are helping a lot of the uninitiated, which has always been a problem, get the true nature of our government and the people who run it?
Yeah, what was it Mencken said, that every decent man is ashamed of the government he lives under?
Right.
And I would say we have even more reason to be ashamed since 9/11. But I do think that even though they sort of seem to go from strength to strength, as in that, say, the whole shutting down of Boston and its suburbs and rousting people out of their houses, ordering everybody to stay off the streets, and you're not allowed to even walk your dog. People were not allowed to take their dogs out of the house to urinate, etc. So even Hitler and Stalin didn't do that. So I think when that sort of thing happens, it's true that the sheep will salute and say yay, but more and more of the smart people, the independent thinkers, the critical thinkers, go, holy smokes, what the heck is happening? So it's always a race, as it always has been throughout all of human history, between Rothbard said power and market, power and freedom, government versus the creative free forces in society. So we never need a majority. The majority is always either just living their lives, and who can blame them, right? There's plenty enough to raise your family and mow your yard and go to church and paint the house, take care of your kids. I mean, there's just a million legitimate, wonderful things to do. But those of us who are concerned about the government, concerned about our freedoms, concerned about seems to be the abolition of our freedoms, we're always going to be a minority, and the people on the other side, the commissar types, are always going to be a minority too. So here's the battle, and I think that even though initially, and if you listen to the media, of course, everybody was loving the cops in Boston, loving the shutdown, loving the police state, loving totalitarianism, giving the Hitler salute. Well, it's not actually true, and when I talk to friends of mine, I'm from that area, when I talk to friends of mine in Boston and the Boston area, while it's true that a lot of people are doing that, that's not untrue, but it's not everybody by any means, and the people who are dissenters are becoming even more dissenters. So I think just since, probably the worst time ever was right after 9/11, when it seemed like everybody was for a bigger police state and a bigger government, more wars and so forth, and people pulled back from opposing bigger government, and therefore, of course, government ballooned. But our side has been increasing ever since, especially among young people. Ron Paul, of course, is the key reason for this. He woke up literally millions of young people in this country and all around the world, not just in America, to the dangers of government, to Austrian economics, libertarianism, and all the sorts of things that, Brian, you and I are interested in. So the young people are not saluting. The young people are not cheering the police state. We're in the same situation, that was probably true in ancient Babylon. I mean, those who don't want the total state are always a minority, but we're the thinking minority. We're the minority that has obviously the truth on our side. The commissars, no matter how powerful they are, they live a lie. Everything they do is based on lies. That's why I think we have to be fundamentally optimistic about the future, because young people are with us, and again, because we have the truth on our side. On the other hand, that's not to say there's not a lot of very bad stuff happening right now and in the near future as well.
Yeah, the thing about Babylon, that's part of the problem is getting people to understand one another. Going back and forth like that, there does seem to be a particular vocabulary that fits one group and doesn't fit the other. But on the Boston bombing thing, and with the aftermath of 9/11, one of the things that's puzzled me is that the source of information for the state of mind, the reaction of individuals, and all the rest that we saw has largely been either polls, and polls reported by the media, which we are also learning more and more, has its own agenda and filter, and is not exactly forthcoming with facts and truths if they contradict the narrative. So when you look at the attitude of America after 9/11, when you look at the folks in Boston during that so-called manhunt and all the rest, and house to house, do you really think that the majority reflected the opinions as reported? Was it just a temporary reaction to a traumatic event? Or did the vast majority of people have the ability to step back and objectively analyze, scrutinize the situation and say, this is really horse hockey?
Well, I think it's someplace in between. I think that, the effect of the government schools, one reason for the government schools is to make sure that people don't reflect critically, that they don't think independently, they just buy what they're told. I don't know what the percentages might be, but there's certainly a lot of people in that category. But again, I think there are more and more people who are questioning. And of course, one starts to think that the people who didn't stop it are the ones telling us what happened and what to think about it. There's something funny about that. But of course, the government investigates itself. The government decides how much money of ours it should have. The government decides how much power it should have, and you better comply. So there's something fundamentally wrong with that system. The government is the only thing that, when it falls flat on its face in total, abject, disastrous failure, can then say, hey, give us more money and more power.
Yeah.
And there's no, and they investigate themselves, and they said, hey, we did great, but, circumstances prevented us. And, of course, who knows? Now, apparently, we know that the FBI and the CIA knew about these two guys. Maybe we're following them at a certain point. We just don't know. There's just too many lies.
Well, there's so many other instances.
I think this is true of a number of events. It's not just Boston.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've got the FBI
horrific, but
helping people
why
design
is this
bombs.
So much more a newsworthy and life-changing event than say, regular crimes? I mean, I noticed in that horrible Cleveland kidnapping business that it turned out that nearby there was the home of a guy where he had murdered 21 women and buried them in his yard a few years ago. Now, I never even heard about this.
I don't know.
So
I wanted
that
to.
doesn't count because, of course, it's not seen as a strike against the state. Terrorism, which the state actually likes, I mean, they like it to happen, it empowers them and gives them the excuse to rule us. That's seen as going after the regime. So that's why it's so much more a big deal. And, of course, it is a horrendous thing. It's a horrendous crime, if it indeed is those guys, a horrendous crime. But only certain crimes seize the attention of the media in that way, and of course of the government and the whole propaganda apparatus. I think it's always important to step back, to be calm, think things through, to be independent, to be critical. And my own view is, don't believe the government until you have independent proof, because these people are a bunch of liars. They lie all the time. They never say, we want to undertake this particular project because we want more of your money, but we want to mess with your lives. They, by the way, love messing with our lives. Just as they love starting wars, they love sending people to kill and be killed. They love messing with people's lives. These are the kind of people who rise within the government. As Rothbard said, this is the conglomeration of all the worst people in society, the government.
But is that the nature of government, to be a magnet for sociopaths?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sociopaths, psychopaths, whatever,
Right. Okay.
Yeah, these are the people who have no remorse, who can just start a war in which 1 million people are killed in Iraq, and there's George Bush strutting around like he's a great guy. And of course, he's not the only one. He had a lot of help in that. They never seem to be sorry. Certainly, they never regret the pile of corpses that they're responsible for. In fact, they think it's a great thing. They enjoy it. They get a charge out of it. Makes them feel like big guys, I guess, important men. Maybe I look like just a regular guy, but, I can kill a lot of people, and you can't. So that's true.
Well, there is the muzzle of the gun from which so many horrible things emanate, especially when it comes to governance and power and all the rest. Speaking of all of that and the ongoing transgressions visited upon Americans by the government, the big story, or one of the big stories that's circulating at the moment, is the revelation that the IRS has been out looking at conservative organizations and demanding information from them and all the rest of that, and has a giant odor about it. But when I read the story, I was thinking, considering the criteria that's been reported for this IRS abuse, like teaching people how to make America better and free, and the importance of the Constitution and all the rest, I got the sinking feeling that there was an IRS agent appropriating an office right across the hall from yours, down at the Mises Institute.
You mean Bob?
Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't have that. But
talk about Bob.
I have a little bit of a dissent on that.
Oh.
What about the fact that they take our money? What about the fact that they put a gun to your head and say, "Give me X percentage of your salary, or I'm going to put you in jail. If you resist, I'm going to kill you." That's the problem with the IRS. Not that they're not granting tax exemptions to some Tea Party group or not. That's not the problem. The problem is they steal your money. They're a gang of thieves. On behalf, of course, of the whole government is a gang of thieves. The IRS is the point of the spear in terms of stealing our money. That's the problem with the IRS. So, yes, they should apply their tax-exempt rules equally to Tea Party groups and anti-Tea Party groups and so forth. But that's not what's wrong with the IRS. So this is a little bit of a distraction from what we should actually be worried about. And why would they want a distraction? Because we're undergoing a period right now of vast increases in taxation and vast increases to come with Obamacare. So is this a way to distract us so we think that the key problem, again, is that Tea Party's not getting a tax exemption?
Yeah,
I'm suspicious.
Well, true enough.
I'm always suspicious, however. So
yeah, well, no, but I think that whole 501c3, C4, and the criteria that's necessary to jump through the hurdles to get to that point, and all the people who participate in various and disparate groups that are able to say that they're one of the gang and all the rest. But the overriding situation, the overriding reality is what you just mentioned: is theft, point of a gun, men with guns coming to take what you've earned, and all the rest.
We're supposed to think that Osama bin Laden is bad. He doesn't take our money.
True enough.
I guess he's dead. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's been dead for a long time. Who knows?
Dead twice, actually. Yeah.
Guys like that.
Yeah, but
they don't want to take our money. They don't want to take our freedom of speech. They don't want to run our lives. They want us out of their countries. Yeah.
The thing that got to me about the IRS story is just like a second, third, fourth chapter away from what you correctly pointed out, and I was as getting back to the idea of transparency and the revelation that the government is not your friend. The government's not your pal. The government, it may act as your nanny, but it's not your nanny. I mean, it's force. It's people with guns doing things that are unconstitutional, contrary to freedom, contrary to liberty, contrary to individual responsibility. And just like the folks up in Boston who thought it was just great, that you had armored vehicles, running around. You had this battalion of people, so for one guy,
guys dressed in desert camouflage, which really helps in Boston, right? That really,
well, there are ports.
Of course, it's just militarization. I mean, the cops have been entirely militarized, as in the totalitarians in Soviet Union or Nazi Germany or other regimes like that. The cops become a military occupying force, and that's. So that's why they have tanks, to intimidate the public, not to intimidate criminals.
Message of intimidation, right? Absolutely. Yeah. In
fact, they're easier to spot for criminals or terrorists.
But don't you love the way that politicians and police officials and so on talked? In fact, I think it was Larry Kudlow who was just going bananas the other night about Ron Paul. As a matter of fact, Ron Paul's analysis went on up there: men with guns, house to house, violation of the Fourth Amendment, and so on. And he's trying to parse Ron Paul's words and saying that Ron Paul said they had tanks. They didn't have tanks. Look at these vehicles. They have wheels, not treads. I mean, as this is some remarkable differentiation so that we can all feel safe that these armored vehicles that have got 50 caliber weapons and revolving turrets and men with enough guns and ammo to hold off a small European country, are driving up and down the street, and the fact that people voluntarily welcomed them into their homes. They welcomed them into their homes, to search for this teenager, and then they would cut to a video showing these guys in full battle regalia with guns pointed at the people at the front door, pulling them out with their hands up and so on. This is not exactly a picture of a welcoming party into anybody's home, at that. So I just find the inconsistencies and the irony and so on to be mildly amusing in a cynical sort of way when the politicians and the policemen and some of my colleagues, quote unquote, in the media are trying to tell us that in an Animal Farm sort of way that this is all perfectly okay. But
it's just, of course, it's like Ron Paul is pointing out the emperor has no clothes on, or rather the emperor is dressed in body armor and has a machine gun pointed at your head.
I prefer him naked, actually.
People are shocked that anybody would dare to say such a thing when obviously the police state is our friend.
Well, I get the sense, and I think you and I have talked about this, in years gone by, is I came across a term. Maybe you know it. It is a prejudice, not a bias. I think the term was bias for normalcy, or something along that order. That is the reaction of individuals who can't accept a contradiction to the narrative. And it's not that it's wrong. It's not that that the contradiction is a lie or misleading or buffoonery or skullduggery. It's the fact that that government's supposed to be our friend, policemen's supposed to be our friend, politicians don't lie. The White Sox are going to win the series. All these things that are part of the narrative. And when the contradiction comes along, and you talk about rogue cops and the law not being enforced, Judge Napolitano's conversations about the Constitution and exile and chaos and all the rest, that is initially in kind of a Babinski reflex rejected not because it's wrong, but because it contradicts the Disney-esque fable of.
I actually agree with Keith Olbermann recently when he said that if you're on television, you can make critiques of individual people or individual actions, but if you say that there's something fundamentally wrong with the American system, your throat is slit and you're gone. So you're not allowed. It's true. You're not allowed, and because television news and television in general is an arm of the state, doing nothing but promoting the wars, the police state, the taxes, and also all the distractions they'd like us to focus on instead of I still don't think we know how many taxes are involved in Obamacare. I just found out yesterday that one of the taxes is a 10% excise tax on tanning.
Oh yeah. That's that put a lot of itty bitty entrepreneurs that had saved up and either rented or purchased a used tanning bed and had a little place in the back of a barber shop or a beauty salon, put them right out of business.
Well, they hate independence. They hate small businesses. They hate the self-employed. They want to wreck us. That's the government. It's not only Obama. Bush people didn't like us either. That's the government. They're parasites, and they see any area of freedom or independence or prosperity that's not in their gift as something to be stamped out.
From an economic standpoint, let me ask you: there's the saying, I believe, attributed to Margaret Thatcher about the only thing wrong with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. Mm-hmm. Isn't that essentially?
She did.
I'm sorry.
She did.
She ran out of other people's money, or she said that?
She talked a good game, but that was about it, right? She's like Reagan.
Well, maybe that was her revelation.
But it's still a great line.
Yeah,
it's a great line.
I thought it was a great line. As it turns out, it was an epiphany. So there's for her anyway. But with regards to that, the same thing pretty much applies all the way across the board, with the exception of capitalism, right? Fascism, communism, all those isms. Ultimately, no matter how much, as the government assumes more and more control of the means of production, to that at some point, don't you run out of slaves?
Yeah, I sometimes wonder whether the governing classes, the governing classes within the state, have actually learned that they don't want communism because it means too little money for them.
only
Yuri
get-
Maltsev, who was a professor of economics in Russia before he fled to the United States, and he teaches in Wisconsin today. Remember him pointing out that sort of in the latter days of the Soviet Union, there was a party boss in a local city who was in a car accident. And when he was in the car accident, his trunk popped open and he had a bunch of salamis in it. And it resulted in the local people pulling him out of the car and beating him up. And if he had been rescued by the cops, he might have been killed. And Yuri said, under communism, that was sort of the difference. You had an old wreck of a car, and you had salamis in the trunk. That was the difference between a high-ranking state guy and the people. So they didn't like that. I mean, so that maybe they're not ever going to say nationalize the means of production in this country. And I think really socialism, communism was never a threat here, even though we do have socialistic things like TVA and of course the Pentagon's socialist, and but regular factories and manufacturing companies and so forth, I guess they're in no danger of being nationalized. But of course the American system has been in ebbs and flows since Franklin Roosevelt fascism, which is the corporate state. Mussolini said it's the combination of state power and corporate power is described as fascism, and that's our system. So we have the oligarchs, the plutocrats, the big businesses, the George Soroses, the Warren Buffetts, GE, all of these big companies in cahoots with the government as against the rest of us. So I think that's the threat. It clearly is getting worse. And whether they can restrain themselves from actually destroying the economy, I don't know. I always think of Aesop's fable about the scorpion and the frog, and the scorpion asked the frog if he can have a ride across the river, and the frog says, "What do you think, I'm crazy? You'll sting me and we'll drown." And the scorpion says, "No, I'd be crazy. I'd drown myself." So the frog says, "Okay." So they're going across the river, and the scorpion stings the frog, and as they're drowning, the frog said, "Why did you do that?" And the scorpion said, "Well, it's my nature." So it's sort of the nature of the scorpion we call the state with its big stinger keeps sticking us. Will they stop before they destroy? I mean, I don't know. They have to be stopped, and we can stop them. We actually don't have to accept it. If we refuse to go along with what they want, they can't actually put it over on us. So it's again the constant battle between freedom and power. And will there be enough people, enough smart people, enough influential people to advocate for freedom as against the total state? I believe so, but I must say you can't ever be 100% sure.
Well, no, but it gives you something to look forward to, say a town hall meeting with some congressman or senator who's trying to run for re-election, and the masses get up and beat him into smithereens with salamis. I think that'd be a great afternoon of entertainment. They take our guns away. We'll just have to go get bologna, salami.
Reminds me of another Mencken quote. I can't remember the whole thing, but it's about that he was for the ability of the people to burn, maim, hit, crush, bastinado. He had flay. He had a bunch of great words. Any federal job holder, any government job holder. So of course, if he said that today, I guess he'd be under arrest for terrorism. And he didn't mean it literally. He meant it metaphorically. But we have to stop respecting these. When the TSA guy at the airport is grabbing your private parts, you don't have to be polite to him. And of course, there's certain things you could say that they'd toss you in jail for, because you're not allowed to disrespect the TSA agent while, of course, he's allowed to do anything to you. We have to cultivate an attitude of disobedience, of disrespect, of refusal to obey, of withdrawing our consent. If we're forced into certain things, we don't consent to it any more than if the mugger on the street wants your wallet, don't consent to it. Maybe you'll give him the wallet, because the consequences are worse if you don't give him the wallet. But you don't consent to it. You don't say, "Thanks, sir," or whatever when he does it. The government is the mugger writ large. We face these people, I think, as they become worse, it becomes clearer what they are. As far as I can tell, all across the country, local governments are vastly increasing everybody's property taxes on the grounds that your house is worth much more than it used to be. Well, no, it's not. But again, you can't really apply reason to this. It's just theft. So it's why, they charge $500 for tickets that used to be $60.
Well, they need the money. They need the money, yeah.
Why they're just grabbing with both hands at every honestly earned dime in the people's wallets, grabbing it for themselves and for their friends.
Thanks to everybody who shops at Amazon.com. I wanted to mention that LRC gets a small commission at no cost to the buyer every time you go to Amazon through an LRC link, any of the widgets on the page for books or other items, or entering through the ad at the top left-hand corner of the front page. So thanks again, and it's a huge help. And Amazon, what a great company. It's just extraordinary. You don't need to go down to the local bricks and mortar place. You don't have to pay, in many cases anyway, sales taxes. So far as I can tell, virtually everything the human race produces is for sale at Amazon.com. So I highly recommend it. It helps keep LRC alive and growing. So thanks to all of you who shop at Amazon.
You're reminding me of the story that has just come out, I think yesterday, with regards to our mutual friend in this fight up in New Hampshire, Ian Freeman. The city of Keene, New Hampshire, has filed charges against a group calling themselves the Robin Hoods, who were going around basically following the meter maids. The cops who were ticketing and paying and slipping quarters and dimes and so on or whatever into the parking meters, and the city filed charges against them for doing that because the number of tickets had gone down that were being written had gone down considerably, so therefore revenues into the city had gone down considerably, and these guys running around with pocketfuls of quarters were the reason for it. And I've got to get back to Ian and ask him, the details of what is the basis for that. I mean, what possible rule, regulation, law, could actually be in effect that says that I can't slip a quarter into the meter where Lew Rockwell's car is parked because there's a meter maid coming down the street going to nail him with a $25 ticket.
But the law is whatever they say it is. The law is whatever is what they use to hurt us, to elude us, and it's not some independent entity. I mean, it's designed, passed, and administered by government to hit us over the head. So, but this sort of thing, of course, is tremendously fun. It's also a reminder that the typical description of Robin Hood, that he robbed the rich to give to the poor, is incorrect.
Right.
If you look at the great 1938 Errol Flynn movie, or even the Disney Robin Hood cartoon is very good on this. What they were doing was they were taking tax money back from the government and giving it to the people from whom it had been taken. That's what Robin Hood did. So, of course, it was the rich, it was the government-connected rich, and these people were poor because they'd been ripped off by the tax collectors. But it's actually a tax story.
Well, I think it's a great effort those guys that are doing out there, just constantly poking the local Leviathan in the eye, and with things like that. And I think we're probably both big fans of Macon, and I carry around little quotes of his. The one that I really love is, "On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire at last, when the White House will be adorned by a downright moron." I think that is unquote. That is where that.
I think it's happened a number of times.
Well, there is that. It's not just today. Listen, before we run out of time, I got to ask you for a. I have not been able to get a schedule to match up to accommodate a conversation with Ron Paul yet. But until that happens, could you? Because I know you've written about this at LewRockwell.com, the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, and what a terrifically warm reception it's gotten from people of all political stripes.
It's only one of the things Ron is doing in quote unquote retirement, when he's actually working harder and doing more stuff than when he was a congressman. And one of the things was to set up this institute, which is the first time he's ever had his name on anything. Shows how close to his heart the issue of war and peace is. And also prosperity, because it's the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, because the two, peace and prosperity, are so intimately connected. And so he wants to advance the idea of peace in a scholarly way and in a popular way. And his former aide on foreign policy, Daniel McAdams, is the head of it. And it's a tremendous organization. So when this was announced, every neocon in the country and every commissar type absolutely flipped out, including these left-wing people who are allegedly pro-peace, but of course they're not. So they all attempted to attack him in every way possible. And everybody who was associated with the Ron Paul Institute, they really all had a tantrum. But I don't think it had any effect, because these people only influence their fellow neocons who all hate Ron Paul and what he stands for anyway. So maybe this is a case of bad publicity being better than no publicity at all in the famous.
Yeah, spell the name right.
I think it's bad publicity.
You bet.
It did give some publicity. A lot of people gave spontaneous donations to the Institute, and I urge everybody to take a look at the webpage. Just look up, Ron Paul Institute of Prosperity in Google. So there's a lot of exciting things coming out, and because Ron, here's what I fear. Here's why they flipped out. Here's why they were foaming at the mouth. Probably likely to be, arrested for having rabies if they had a dog collar on. Why they were so upset is because they actually know that this is a key part of Ron Paul's appeal to the young. Pew Foundation did, as they're always doing massive polling, did polling the year before the end of the campaign. And one of the things they asked young people, why are you interested in Ron Paul? Why do you support Ron Paul? And the smear answer was, they want to smoke pot. And by the way, if people want to smoke pot and they're an adult, it's none of the government's business, in my view, and Ron Paul's view, too. But, of course, that's not why they love Ron Paul. They love Ron Paul first and foremost because he stood for peace. Young people tend to be much more idealistic. They don't like the idea of just going overseas and murdering people, whether with drones or sanctions or whatever else the neocons and the U.S. government have arranged. So he touches people here very deeply, and again, around the world. This is not just in this country. So that's why they flipped out. That's why they stamped their little feet and beat their chests. That's a medal on Ron Paul's chest. It's a medal on the chest of everybody who's involved in this institute. It's going to be doing very important work, and the neocons, I might say with great gladness, are going to continue to be extremely upset.
Oh, stop! You're breaking my heart. When you look at that, you look at Ron Paul, the Peace and Prosperity Institute. Then you look at what Tom Woods is doing with the Liberty Classroom and that curriculum for homeschooling and all the rest, which is rather terrific. And then you look at what you do as a regular thing there at the Mises Institute with college kids and so on. By the way, on that note, Walter Block mentioned that he was going to be up there this summer. Judge Napolitano told me he was going to be there this summer. Tom told me that he was going to be there this summer. What the hell are you doing there this summer? Is it open to civilians or I mean, what are you doing? What's going on?
Well, we have a couple of academic programs for college students and for graduate students. One is the Rothbard Graduate Seminar, and the big one is called Mises University. And the judge has been wonderful to come up and want to teach a course during Mises University for students who apply and are accepted to it in constitutional law from a libertarian standpoint, not from the government standpoint. He's going to teach it in the Socratic method. So how shall I say, you better be prepared if you're in that class. Because when the judge calls on you, you better have read the material and be actively engaged and know what you're doing. It's difficult, but it's very stimulating. It's the best form of law teaching. Butler Schaefer always makes this.
Will that ever be available to?
It will be available. It's all going to be recorded. It'll be put up on our website for free.
Excellent.
And people will be able to see it. If you want to watch it simultaneously, there sometimes can be a $10 fee or something like that. But once it's archived, everything is for free, and Tom teaches here. We just have the best scholars and teachers in the freedom movement. It's a tremendous experience. The kids tell us it's a life-changing time, and I think that's correct. It is a life-changing time. People who are not students are able to come. However, the students are all on scholarship. If adults want to come, and I'm assuming there's still spaces available because we limit that so as not to change the character of the program, but you have to pay our costs. Come to the program if you're an adult, because these again are designed for students. That's why people give us donations to teach students. So there's just the programs have put thousands and thousands of students through them over 30 years, and I think we've had a wonderful effect. We continue to. Truth is appealing. Also, it's appealing to people that we are the most radical academic institution in the world.
Well, we're going to post all of the necessary links to the Institute, to obviously to LewRockwell.com. We've already got, we're going to put the Ron Paul's Institute up there and everybody else. We already got Walter and Tom and then their efforts and books and periodicals and so on, because it's, as I said at the beginning, this is the ammunition that people need to take on the ongoing battle for freedom and liberty and everything else. And
by the way, all the past Mises universities are online for free. You can look at the lectures. We have a massive amount of stuff up for free: books, papers, videos. Everybody's welcome to come to Mises.org and take a look.
You can start by downloading Bastiat's The Law. There's a nice primer for those of you who haven't done that before, and then it just builds from there. Lew, once again, always appreciate your time, and I promise we will not go 2.5 months before we have another chat.
Wonderful, Brian, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thanks so much for listening to the Lew Rockwell Show today. Take a look at all the podcasts. There have been hundreds of them. There's a link on the upper right-hand corner of the LRC front page. Thank you.